Think about the version of you that shows up at a job interview. Now think about the version of you that shows up at a family dinner. Now think about the version of you that shows up when you're alone in your car, singing badly to a song nobody else will ever hear. Are those the same person? You'd probably say yes. You'd say there's a core version of you underneath all of it, a stable personality that just gets slightly adjusted for context. But the real answer is far stranger. Decades of psychology suggest that stable core might be much smaller than you think, and the situation around you might be doing far more of the work than you ever imagined. For most of the 20th century, psychologists assumed personality worked like a fingerprint. Fixed, consistent, something you carry with you into every room. Then, in 1968, a psychologist named Walter Mischel published a review that shook the entire field. He looked at study after study, measuring supposedly stable traits like honesty or aggression. He found something uncomfortable. A person's behavior in one situation barely predicted their behavior in a different situation, even when the trait being measured was supposedly the same. A kid who cheated on a test at school didn't reliably cheat at home. An employee who was scrupulously honest with a cash register wasn't necessarily honest filling out an expense report. This became known as the person-situation debate, and it asked a genuinely unsettling question. What if personality isn't the main character of your behavior? What if the situation is? Here's where it gets stranger. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo ran an experiment at Stanford University. He took a group of ordinary college students, screened for good mental health, no history of violence, nothing unusual at all. He randomly assigned half of them to play prison guards. The other half became prisoners in a fake basement jail built for the study. Within days, some of the guards began humiliating the prisoners, not because they were secretly cruel people. Nothing in their background suggested that. The uniform, the role, the power dynamic of the situation itself seemed to pull new behavior out of them. Behavior that had nothing to do with who they thought they were walking in. The experiment had to be shut down early. Zimbardo's conclusion wasn't that these students were bad people wearing a good person mask. His conclusion was more disturbing. Under the right situational pressure, almost anyone's behavior can shift dramatically, regardless of their personality on a normal Tuesday. Now here's the twist most people never expect. You assume your personality is the author of your choices. You assume it's the stable thing generating your behavior moment to moment. But a growing body of research suggests it might work almost backward. Your environment quietly writes a huge portion of the script, and your personality is more like an actor doing its best to stay in character while the scene keeps changing around it. Think about how differently you act at a funeral compared to a wedding. Nobody finds that strange. You don't accuse yourself of being fake. You call it appropriate. But if the situation can pull out grief in one room and joy in another, so easily, so completely, how much of that reaction was really you, and how much was the room? Psychologist Stanley Milgram ran perhaps the most famous demonstration of this. In the early 1960s, he asked ordinary volunteers to administer what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person, simply because an authority figure in a lab coat calmly instructed them to continue. Most of them did, not because they were cruel, because the situation, the authority, the framing, the sequence of small steps made continuing feel like the reasonable choice in that specific room, at that specific moment. Take those same people out of the lab, and most of them would never dream of hurting a stranger. So, which version is the real them? This is the modern mirror. You probably think of yourself as one consistent person, confident, anxious, funny, reserved. Whatever label feels true. But look closer at your own week. You're not quite the same person responding to a work email as you are texting your closest friend. You're not quite the same person in a silent library as you are at a loud concert. You didn't choose most of those shifts consciously. The room chose them for you, and your personality adapted to make sense of it afterward. This doesn't mean you're not really you. It means the story of a single, unchanging self might be less accurate than the story of many contextual selves, each one shaped by the pressures, expectations, and quiet social rules of the room you're standing in. Your personality isn't a fixed script you carry from scene to scene. It's closer to a skilled improviser, reading the room, adjusting instantly, so smoothly that you never even notice the performance. So the next time you catch yourself acting differently around your boss than around your best friend, don't assume one version is the mask and one is the truth. Ask instead what the room is asking of you. Because that question, more than any personality label you've ever given yourself, might be the truest thing you can say about who you are. Think about the version of you that shows up at a job interview. Now think about the version of you standing in this exact room right now. You already know which one is writing the script.